Those are all the cranes for shipping containers. They just come in here.
This is West Oakland. There's tons of freight moving in and out from right around here, which makes it appropriate to have container-based housing. A generation ago, average home price was 1 to 2x your annual income. Quiet. We shouldn't have to live in the middle of nowhere to afford to build our own house. We should be able to do that in the middle of one of the most expensive cities in the world.
What is this?
So basically, what, a year now ago? This was just on Craigslist. It's around half an acre. I think we paid $2,600 for supposedly about a half an acre. We were tired of paying rent in the Mission, so for less than our rent on an old 2-bedroom, we rented this whole half acre and kind of lightly tested the landlord ahead of time. We're like, we're just going to build small houses here and you're going to get an automatic payment of rent every month and don't worry about it. We rent out some of the other containers. It's pretty post-apocalyptic looking. On the container that Heather and I live in, we've got a kilowatt of solar on the roof, and then this weird microwave dish is internet. It's a line of sight link to some local internet service provider that does fast internet that you can do off grid for like 90 bucks a month. So yeah, it's pretty much like my dream post-apocalyptic cyberpunk setup. Right now, the median rent in San Francisco, I want to say, is $2,600 for a 1-bedroom. So yeah, we're able to buy a container, like a full container, for cheaper than our rent in the Mission was, which is crazy. So we're using used containers because they're incredibly cheap. It's like here, varies a little with scrap steel prices, but all 3 of these were about $2,600 each delivered. So you have a watertight box that's, you know, way more structurally sound than you could possibly need. They're stacked right before we buy them. They've been at sea, stacked 8 high, just with little brackets on the corners in hurricanes. So like in terms of a house, they're way overkill. You know, for under $3,000, you get that to start. And then all our windows on this container, they're all double pane. We got them from a free or very low cost building material store.
The paint is highly reflective, so the container itself stays pretty cool throughout the day.
It's totally illegal to have a house this small. So our plan is to experiment here.
So the interior space is 160 square feet. We've gotten into bigger houses are better, so you have giant houses that are built out of bad materials and fall apart quickly. It's been amazing to be able to have a small space that we could put marble floors in if we wanted to.
You have such permission to experiment. Like, you can make your floors out of things that would be super labor intensive per square foot. Like if it took us an hour per square foot to make the floor, that's feasible. It's not this crazy thing where it's 3,000 square feet that you then go bankrupt trying to heat and cool, let alone make look decent and keep clean. Yeah, we have a lot of permission to experiment. The fridge is a super simple hack. It's a deep freezer, so it's well insulated and opens on the top, and heat rises, so both of those contribute to the efficiency. But it's got this crappy thermostat, like all of them do, that comes with it. So instead of relying on this thermostat at all, what we did was add an Arduino, a temperature sensor, and a relay. Every 10 seconds, the Arduino checks how cold the fridge is. If it is below freezing, it turns it off. And if it's more than 3 degrees above freezing, it turns it on. This was maybe $20 in parts. So it's a temperature sensor. This is using, I think, a third what the Energy Star $2,000 refrigerators use. So it's a bit, we're still trying to figure out with the verticalness of it. This is something where we just decided we can use something commonly available, like $150 freezer from Home Depot, add a slight adaptation to it and end up with something affordable and better than the $2,000 propane RV fridge that everybody else seems to want to buy. So we've adopted some stuff from normal houses, some stuff like these lights that people just get as a toy. They were, each 15-meter strip was $20. So I think, yeah, this is like $50 worth of lights in here. They run directly off 12-volt DC. And then we've also adapted a lot from RV accessories and camping accessories, like our propane oven and stove. So this is a highly rated camping stove that turns out works pretty well as your primary stove too.
We haven't done a lot of baking because the oven is so small. I have to downsize all my pans. So for a while I was making pans out of tin foil and baking on that.
Bathroom's a work in progress.
I think we need to experiment a bit more. So, because it's in a regular building or like shape, I wound up just using these like custom cut blinds for the door. It was the fastest hack that I could put together that was easy to deal with. We have an on-demand water heater, and we're just gonna put one of the water tanks up on top of the container and use gravity feed to pull water down into the container. That's custom because it's a funny shaped bowl. There's also a little fan. It also doubles as our toilet area. When you have to go to the bathroom, you just use this. You lift the seat up, you can go to the bathroom, and then when you're done, we just open up this bucket and pour the bucket of char to cover everything, and that keeps it all smell-free and composting.
Yeah, it doesn't smell like anything.
Super simple. Turns out that if you just cover the surface of your waste with enough charcoal or wood shavings or sawdust, it'll control the smell really well, and it'll also end up with very close to the ideal blend for rapid composting.
We just leave it in the sun. If it spends long enough getting up to temperature, and that's what'll sanitize it eventually.
I want to eventually do another little Arduino setup to monitor the temperature of the middle of the pile, but for now, just let it sit for 1 year to 2 years and then use it like any other compost. We looked into the price here because we wanted to see how much it would cost to get a sewage line run. It's like $30,000. Like crazy, more than our whole cost to build this out and a lot of the tools to just get a sewage connection.
So this is a queen-size bed. We just built the frames out of like steel tubing. And then we don't really need a box spring, just the wood gives us enough support. We have our fancy paint bucket that we use to jump onto bed. I use the sheets, so. Sometimes there have been nights when we might be a bit tipsy and the bucket falls over before we can actually make it into bed.
And then we swear a little bit, put it back up, talk about how we really need to decide what kind of nested coffee/dining table/climb into the bed setup we need to build, and fall asleep and have other things prioritized above it by the next morning. This is simple, you know, it's simple, it's cheap. Instead of everything being a custom build where you have to become a master carpenter before you can have something you can live in, this is something where you can get a box and live in it, and it's not going to be super comfortable till you paint it and maybe add a heater if you're in a colder climate. We didn't want this to be another custom project that's hiding from everybody. We wanted this to be something where we can have open source plans, sell open source kits, and sell custom finished versions very affordably. And it's insulated inside, plywood to be mounted later. This is like our developers kits that we can have like variations around this. This is all even, so that I can just mount the plywood right to it, screw into that angle iron, and even into the window frame angle iron without going through to the other side of the container. And just be open about why we made the decisions we did, and people can have options. And these hinge up there so that it's just pivot, and then we can lock it shut like if it's traveling or something. You have such permission to experiment. I mean, the average cost of an American kitchen renovation, not a new kitchen, last year was about $28,000. We can happily sell these, like including our labor, at around that on a base unit with off-grid capabilities and everything. And we've spent significantly less than that on building out both of these.
So we're building both of them out simultaneously.
We decided that would be better than discussing and fighting about every design decision. Do you mind if we come in for a minute? Cool. Two of our friends live in this. Occasionally their friends visit and stay in it as well.
I'm just visiting.
So this is the one that Heather owns the design of.
This one's going a little bit slower just because they are living in it, so every time we want to, like spackle the walls, we have to kind of take everything down and spackle it. So there's going to be a shower here, the bathroom will go there. Here's like a little of the insulation poking out. And this one I did an experiment, like Luke just put one sheet of the double bubble foil. I tried doing 2 layers of it. We'll see how much of a difference that makes in the long run once we get everything sealed up. And then here's version 2 of a closet. I wanted to make something like a little bit more modular, so there's like these stacking shelves, and then there'll be a pole that goes along the back wall, and it'll hang like this, and so we can hang all of our clothes.
Heather wanted windows that opened, which I think was totally unnecessary in mine.
I like windows that open, his don't.
I'm like, it's small enough, we'll just put a fan in the door, and it's like having a big window open.
I see.
This was Heather's big indulgence compared to my container.
I needed to be able to eat ice cream. So it's not quite as efficient as the standing freezer conversion, but it gives you a little bit more options.
We got this third container over here. A friend of ours, as soon as we got this container like unmodified, like the day it got dropped off,
Looks like he's gone, but
he was like, hey, can I just rent that from you and use your tools to convert it and like buy my own windows and stuff? And I don't know how to weld or anything, but maybe you guys can teach me as part of the deal.
he has his little bike tire chandelier. There's his chandelier. So I think he sat down with his dad. They've kind of worked up a layout that they're gonna do. And I haven't seen the blueprints yet, so I think it'll be a little different than ours. I think he's imagining that like his bedroom will stay there, and then I think he's gonna keep the bathroom back next to the bedroom, and then have this be more of an open hangout space. And I think he's waiting. His dad's gonna come help him do the electrical.
I love this closet.
Bike handlebars.
Oh wow, those are bike bars. That's what's really cool. Like, it's super small, but this dude's like a programmer, and he's building largely unsupervised. Like, he'll ask us a question as he has it, and just seeing him come up with cool stuff like bike handlebars that turn into his closet. That's neat. Like, that is really exciting to think about scaling and sharing. For us, you know, it's helping to cover the cost of the lot, and I think it's an interesting potential model where for way less than you'd pay for an apartment, we're charging him $500 a month. He'll own the container after a year. For $500 a month, he'll learn how to build his own house, essentially. It'll be interesting as we do like a set of 10 of these, doing like a whole complex of these. Then you're essentially just talking about building like a nice private hangout room for each person in the form of a container. What do you want?
Something with cheese in it.
To a person?
Too much cheese.
Oh, I'm so surprised. Something with cheese. I would have never suspected.
We should use those mushrooms too.
Okay. It would almost be silly to even bother running wires to them. Like, just put a super small, like significantly less than our solar array on top. And the costs there look very attractive. What else? Maybe some olives too.
Kale? We should use that kale.
Yeah. Next time.
Alright.
We're thinking that we'll do it at somewhere around like $900 per container with shared use of the warehouses, making it like the cheapest housing option anywhere nearby.
Do you see this as kind of a mobile home?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I wanted to call this was Trailer Trash Park, like really parody the idea that portable, low-cost infrastructure is only for people who cannot afford other options. I think that doesn't have to be true. Portable infrastructure doesn't have to be poorly made. It doesn't have to be energy intensive. It can be, preferable to the things that are in place permanently. I think it's way more scalable than the alternative of having corporately owned apartments that people can't even afford to rent.
I think right now, culturally, it's not feasible necessarily, just because, in preparation to live in this house, we had to sit down and go through our stuff and get rid of a lot of stuff. So here's our closet. This side is Luke's, this side is mine. So I just have like t-shirts and socks, and then it's still not that. I think I have probably 4 pairs of pants and 5 pairs of shorts or something. Like enough clothes that'll last me about 2 weeks. I think we do laundry about every 2 weeks. And Luke has his dress clothes here in a wad. They're still on a hanger. The hanger's here.
Turns out I don't need every new electronic gadget, and Heather does not need 3,000 outfits, and that's taken some conversation. So it's a cool license to actually, surprisingly, it's a license to consume, just to be more intelligent about it. This is $100 meant as a bar sink with the whole sink and pan and everything, as opposed to the normal kitchen sinks that are $200 just for the pan, then another $150 for the top part. It's super minimalist. There's the on-demand pressurizer, so we can have next to no water pressure coming in and get it up to household pressure just as we use it. We're able to live a lifestyle that most of our friends seem to think is pretty desirable, that my siblings aren't able to live, that Heather's siblings aren't currently able to live, because of decisions like that. It takes some advocacy for people to realize that, working 10 to 20 hours a week at a job to pay your bills and having just way less bills can be very preferable in terms of the lifestyle that it facilitates to working 90 hours a week to live in a crappy place that you don't even like and barely pay your bills.
So this porch area are the doors of the container. And the whole porch is bolted on with 6 bolts. So we can, if we want to move the container, we just unbolt the porch. It slides right into this part of the container, and then you can shut the doors, and the window shades drop down and lock on, and then we can pick it up with a crane and put it on a semi and drive it anywhere we want.
So it really is mobile.
It's largely indistinguishable from any other shipping container you see going down the road when it's packed up.
Wow.
In areas where there are giant lots that are just abandoned, I think it's very feasible to at least have somewhere for a couple months to a couple years where you just happen to drop your infrastructure, and when you have to move it, you move it. It's a day of work, not a giant upheaval and court battle about an eviction. Those things matter as much as we let them. A lot of the energy we're spending fighting within that system could be better spent by imagining tiny, off-grid, slightly post-apocalyptic alternative systems where, you don't have issues like that if you're building your own house for less than you'd pay for Section 8 housing. We can stack these, which is the density barrier to urban living. All of our transportation infrastructure is optimized to move these things around the world, let alone the country. I don't see any giant reason why we shouldn't at least have permission to experiment. I think the real barrier is people being worried with some legitimacy. Zoning can be a huge pain in the ass, and part of this is us not having dealt with that, another part of it is us just, you know, being risk-seeking and making a bet that enough people are sufficiently pissed off about how unaffordable it is to live in such a great city, that like the rules we're breaking, we should have a good reason why we're breaking them and a feasible path to how we could change them, and then, you know, kind of go from there. So
Zoning's really difficult.
yeah, my very limited understanding is that we are below the square footage allowed for residents, and I'm pretty sure that this lot's zoned as like vacant parking or something weird. I mean, there are a lot of smart people doing a lot of important things to change zoning laws. Part of this is a decision by us to not be those people. Like, I want to build a compelling reason for why people should change laws. People want like examples. People want some shiny thing that they can be like, oh, this is the solution here. And until it's shiny enough, I think people want to complain about, you know, living next door to, you know, like we have a neighbor who bitches at us because our dog barks, just like we would in the suburbs. That's our main compliance issue that we've had so far. A neighbor complaining about our dog barking. Contrary to what I thought, I was all worried about, like, is the fence high enough? Can people see in? Like, is code compliance going to be here next month, or will we maybe get a year out of this property? Oakland has way better things to worry about than, you know, some people trying to build off-grid houses and live in them. For now, our main issue has been same as it would be in the burbs, somebody complaining about our dog barking, which is surprising and pretty hilarious. The table currently exists in discussion about what to build it out of. As of this morning, we found a nice Instructable for doing a concrete nesting table. For now, it's shoo the dogs away. And
The furniture exists in the category of things that we need to build but haven't yet gotten around to.
like, we've got a lot of stuff that we've bought but not yet deployed. For example, the divider for the bed's going to be a motorized projection screen, like for a film projector. So like, we're able to do funny things like that because the space is so small. What do you want to build next in here?
A rotating countertop.
You're not sacrificing anything.
No, not really. I mean, even ridiculous, indulgent things like having our own treadmill, which is totally ridiculous, I'm addicted to. It was $100 on Craigslist, and it feels a bit silly to be powering a treadmill off of our off-grid solar panel setup, but on the other hand, like, I just go on it for 2 hours in the morning and like answer all my email and do some programming and make whatever phone calls. I just wanted something that like I literally could plug in, so I'm running it off of our solar panels. That's how much like excess power, even with this small setup, we're producing.
Is this totally off-grid?
Pretty much. We cheat. We bought this forklift, and then our buddy helped us fix it. So basically, we learned how to rebuild a carburetor, and now have, for $1,000, a working forklift that we can move water with. So we refill the water tanks. It's been really, really surprising how much of a challenge water has been. Water's just been this huge challenge. The power, like, I'm totally willing to say, yes, you can just have off-grid power, and it's not a big deal. With water, though, it's really, this was a verdant garden, and it died because we had to carry water all of a couple hundred feet from across the street to keep watering it. This is chickens attempt 3.
Yeah. They're much happier in their new house. Go on, ladies. There you go.
It's gonna be a lot of eggs. We're pescatarian, so that'll be a lot of breakfast eggs.
When we turn the garden over, we'll let them loose in the garden and have them till the soil up for us.
People call, like, this outside part is movable, and in permaculture people call that a chicken tractor, because you literally can use it instead of a tractor. They poop out really good fertilizer. They'll till your soil to like 6 inches deep, move this over a raised bed for a week, have a nice fertilized, courtesy of the chickens.
And the raised beds here are pretty integral because most of West Oakland was a landfill.
So people get caught up on like soil testing and, you know, I have to do these 5,000 things and how am I going to make sure my lease lasts 10 years so it's worth it to build the soil. For us, we can afford the $2,000 odd a month to rent the lot, and what can we do right away to get started? So we just have a little weed barrier on the bottom to more or less keep the roots from going into whatever dirt's here, which we're just assuming is not good. And these are even, at least theoretically, movable if we have to move locations. That's something we thought about, like as this neighborhood changes, like the Mission where we moved to this neighborhood from, how we can respond to that, both by attempting to buy a different dilapidated property, but also by keeping our setup as mobile as possible so that this can be a tool for people to have a broader way to respond to gentrification instead of us all just being surprised. Like Heather lived in Williamsburg and it was the same deal there. All her artist friends can't afford to live there, and then same thing happened in East Austin and same thing happened in the Mission, and you know, instead of us all acting surprised, just having infrastructure that we can take with us, where we can build things for less than what most people would spend on a car that function as pretty satisfactory off-grid houses. And then we've got like assorted weird little structures. Like our friend found this weird horse trailer looking thing for us, which we'll convert into some other structure and probably rent out. Behind that van, a friend of ours lives in that, you know, pays us to rent the space, and he showed up one day with that curved wooden box behind it and saw that on the side of the street. It's a full cedar sauna. We're thinking about just throwing some of these, like as we get them working on Airbnb, might as well make it as ridiculous as possible.
So you don't worry about being caught?
I think there are way too many people with cool projects who are. Like, maybe we'll get some giant magical fine that everybody's worried about and I'll change my tune a year from now, but till then, no. There's plenty of people who are worried out of doing more innovative projects because they think that they're going to have some compliance issue. But, you know, I think we need to push the envelope the other way. Like, I don't think these are bad people who are doing things like code enforcement. I think that they're doing their job, and part of our job is to help their job be easier by making the rules that they have to enforce via some political pressure, by building really cool stuff, not by a bunch of lobbying about some theoretical future. You know, we'll make their jobs easier by getting rules changed to be more reasonable rather than less. It's a project worth failing at. We've spent less on it than we would have living in San Francisco or at this point in much of Oakland. So it's not really that risky. Like, we can get kicked out and we'll pick up our houses with our $1,000 forklift and move them down the street. Like, that's not the end of the world.